Hey there, and welcome back to Local Marketing Secrets. I'm your host, Danny Liebrandt, and today I'm joined by Jason Hennessy, an internationally recognized SEO expert, entrepreneur, author, and the founder of Hennessy Digital, one of the fastest growing marketing agencies in America. Jason's work has helped hundreds of businesses, especially law firms, dominate Google and scale through proven SEO systems. He's also the author of Law Firm SEO and Honest SEO, and he's built a massive following of over 1.7 million people just on Instagram, where he shares daily insights on marketing, mindset, and business growth. In this episode, we dive into Jason's 20-year journey from reverse engineering Google's algorithm back in the early 2000s to leading a 100-person agency today. We talk about what really drives local search success in 2025, the biggest mistakes small businesses make with SEO, and how to future-proof your marketing in the age of AI. Now, without further ado, Jason, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Danny. I appreciate you having me on here. I'm excited to dive into all these topics here.
Yeah, definitely. So it seems like you're kind of the local marketing or local SEO veteran. You've been in it longer than most people, and you got into it around 2001. Can you just give me some more background on like how you got started and how you got into the space?
Yeah, I think like most people that stumble upon the area of like digital marketing or specifically SEO, it kind of starts as like a need, especially back then when I was getting into it. SEO wasn't really a main topic that a lot of people spoke about. In fact, it was kind of like black magic. Like if you
Yeah.
knew like how to do SEO, you were like a ninja, right? At the time I had just gotten out of the Air Force. I served my country for about 4 years, got out of the Air Force. I was going to college. I was studying for the LSAT. I was going to go to law school. And I had like a side hustle, I guess, if you will. It was DJing like weddings and parties and such. And so I paid a developer like $5,000 to develop a website. And I called it vegasweddingmall.com because the thought process was if people were Googling, wedding venues or wedding DJs, like I wanted to be able to rank on Yahoo and Google at the time.
Hmm.
The developer spent about 2 months developing it. And then once he was done, there was nobody coming to the website. So I called him up and I'm like, I think the site is broken because nobody's coming to it. And he's like, oh no, that's like this thing called SEO. Like, I don't know how to do that. And so at that point, I'm like, okay, well, I'm guessing I'm gonna have to like teach myself this stuff. And so that was kind of like the genesis of how I got into it. Yep.
Interesting. And then what about starting your agency? How did that come about?
So in 2008, after building that wedding directory that I talked about, it went from Vegas Wedding Mall to Seattle Wedding Mall to Los Angeles Wedding Mall, and eventually kind of built all these directories. Ended up selling that, moved to Atlanta, Georgia, partnered with a guy by the name of Brad Fallon, who had a company called StomperNet. It was like one of the first platforms that taught SEO to business owners. And so while I was in Atlanta, Brad got asked to speak at a DUI lawyer mastermind. And it was like 50 DUI lawyers that got together once a year, and they brought in expert speakers. And so Brad said, hey, Jason, you know way more about this SEO stuff than I do. Why don't I come introduce you? And then you could, talk a little bit about like SEO. And so I'm like, okay, great. So he gave me 24 hours to put together a deck. I knew nothing about legal marketing at the time. And so I got up on stage, gave a presentation. I was very transparent. Out of the 50 lawyers, there was like 7 lawyers that approached me and said, that was awesome. I'm paying my SEO guy like $6,000 per month and he's not doing any of this stuff. Like, do you do this like from a consulting basis? And I'm like, not really, but give me your card. And so I ended up leaving there with like 7 business cards that turned into about $30,000 per month in reoccurring revenue. And
Wow.
so just one 45-minute presentation that I got asked to do one night before was the genesis of my first agency.
Hmm.
So
And you didn't even necessarily choose the law firm niche, but you just got invited to speak at that event, and that's how it
that's
transpired.
exactly right. Yeah. So like it's just fate, I guess. Yeah. How it all happened like that.
Dang, dang. And yeah, talk to me about the evolution of your agency because I mean, plenty of people have local marketing agencies, a lot of people have niche agencies, but you've
Mhm.
grown it to over 8 figures or you're at 8 figures.
Mhm.
Just explain to me like the evolution of your agency and
Yeah.
how you've grown it so large.
So that first story there, that was my first agency, which was called Everspark Interactive. And so that was an agency that I at the time had 3 other business partners. We ended up buying one of the partners out. So then it was just me and one other business partner. He and I are still friends, good friends today. We built it up to a point where we got it to like maybe like $3.5 million in top line revenue. And then it just got to the point where, we had 2 different owners that kind of wanted to take the agency in different directions. And so he ended up buying out my interest after about 8 years of building that. And so I ended up leaving. And so that was basically the first agency. And so fast forward to 2015. So that was from 2008 to about 2015. Fast forward to 2015, we moved out west to California. My young son was pursuing an acting career in Hollywood. I just kind of exited my first agency to my partner. That business continued. In fact, it's still around. It's run by another good friend of mine now. And so I got bored. I played tennis like every single day. And then my wife was like, "Are you ever going to get back to work again?" And so I'm like, "Yeah, I probably should get back into it." And so then I started Hennessy, which is my current agency, which has been around for about 10 years now. And so similar, I focused on just working with lawyers. I niched down. I got my first client for that agency. And I'm like, screw it. If I want to like really get good results, I'm just going to ask for the right budget. And so the proposal that I sent to the first lawyer that I started working with was for $15,000 per month. And the attorney agreed to it. I spent every waking second like working on that to make it an amazing case study
Mm.
because I now had the firepower to do it. Right, $15,000 per month is a great budget. And so I was able to basically make that a great case study, and then I leveraged that case study to get my second client at
Mm.
$50,000 a month, and my third client, right? And then eventually, built that up to a nice lifestyle business at the time. And then from there, the journey continued. I delegated, brought in a coach, brought in like a good executive C-suite team to work with me. And then since scaled it to now we're probably do about 23 million top line, 7 million in profit.
Wow.
Mhm.
That's incredible. Yeah, I feel like that's almost something you're known for is charging a lot as an agency. And I wanted to ask you,
Mhm.
especially for maybe local business owners that aren't too aware or that they just don't know what goes into it, because
Yep.
rightfully so, that there's a lot of SEO agencies that are scams, they don't do a good job.
Yep.
So when you charge something like 15K a month or 10 or 20,
Yep.
whatever,
Mhm.
what goes into that?
Yeah.
What is that money getting used for?
What's the justification, right?
Yeah.
So realistically, it's what's necessary in the field that I work in, right?
Mm.
I work primarily with not just lawyers, but personal injury lawyers. And so personal injury law is it's a vertical where there is high competition. Um, very, very probably one of the most competitive spaces in the world of SEO, right?
Hmm.
Um, but there's also very high margin and profit for the attorneys as well, right? So like if I could generate a lead for a client that turns into a case, that case has a minimum value of like 12 to $13,000. That's their fees for just one case, and those fees can go as high as $100 million, right? Just depending on the case, right? And the injuries and and specific. And so that's the justification is, like when I first got into it, everybody just thought like SEO, like in the personal injury space, you just pay $5,000 per month and you kind of get SEO, right? And I'm
Mm.
just like, that's not really how it works. I mean, like if we really want to be able to dominate, the SERPs, right? The search engine result pages, we got to study the competition. We got to go get the links that they have. We got to write the content that's necessary. We got to put together a good strategy. And my time is valuable too, and I knew that, I was pretty good at this stuff too. Right. And so I wanted to make sure that I valued my time. And there's two ways to kind of go in the agency world, right? You can build the Walmart model, right? Or you can build the Lamborghini approach, right? And so I
Explain that.
wanted, so there's a lot of agencies that work in legal that, they just want to be able to generate, to get clients that'll pay 25, 3,500 bucks per month. Right. And get 500 clients. Right. And that's not a bad model. Right. But I think there's problems to that, right? Because a lot of times, just having like a cookie cutter approach to 2,500 bucks per month might not be the right budget, in certain markets, right? And so I think, you have trouble scaling. You might have high churn, right? Because, maybe you're mismanaging expectations, not intentionally, right? And so I don't know, that's just kind of like a different model, right? Whereas the Lamborghini approach, I think in my mind is like, hey, rather than go out and get 6 clients that pay 2,500 bucks per month, why don't I just get one client that will pay, the combination of all what the 6 clients would pay, and then really have the firepower to kind of make that perfect car, right? That when people see it, like, it's just sexy, it's on the road, right? And now you become kind of like the Lamborghini dealership of your industry, right? And so that was just the approach that I decided to take. Like I said, at the time, I wasn't doing it for cash. Like, I just exited my first company. I was pretty okay, I guess, at the time. It was just a matter of like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I want to build like I said, that Lamborghini dealership in my space.
Yeah. No, and I think that is the right way to go about things, because it gets so complex dealing with so many clients. I've learned that with my agency. I used to just kind of take on anyone from any industry, and it gets so complex. And also the people, just being straightforward, and I'm sure you know this, the people that are paying little are now demanding more results, and they're worse clients. The
Yep.
best clients are usually the ones making the most money and giving you the most money, which is almost ironic.
Yep.
Um,
Mhm.
so I completely agree. I get that. I've never heard it get phrased as the Lamborghini model, but I like that. And
Yeah.
I want to ask you to get a little bit more nuts and bolts on that.
Mhm.
So, like, let's say a 15K retainer, what would be the most expensive of that? Would that be like paying for backlinks or building pages on the site? What would that be?
Yeah, backlinks is part of it. And believe it or not, like, even with that $15,000 per month budget, like, we're not doing all of the work. Like, in some cases, in fact, in most cases, like, we're reverse engineering competition,
Mm,
and we're giving our clients homework. And so, we might see that, 6 of their largest competitors all have a link from the Better Business Bureau. 3 of their largest competitors, might have a link from PR Newswire, right? Because they did a press release, right? So then what we're doing is we're going back to our clients and saying, hey, we really need you to reach out to the Better Business Bureau, sign up for it. Even if you don't get any business from being on the Better Business Bureau, we need that link, right?
mm,
And they say, okay, great, perfect. They go do their homework. In the background, we're also going and doing, like, our citations. We're doing, the guest blog posts, right? We're kind of doing all the reverse engineering of the links that we could build. But, I'm an agency that's known to give out homework to our clients, right? Because SEO, it's definitely a two-way street, right? There's
mm.
only so much I could do as your SEO vendor, or partner, I should say, but there's other things that I'm going to tell you that you need to do as well. And the clients that actually get engaged and do their homework are the clients that really do very well in their markets, right? So that's a big part of it, is like link building. Content creation was also a large part of it, right? This is, back before the world of like AI, where you'd have to pay writers, to write good content and edit the content and publish the content and develop the content strategies. And so in the world of legal, you just can't write like a bunch of like BS content, because you can get your client to lose their law license, right? If you start
Yeah.
saying the wrong things, right? And so, so we had to hire more sophisticated writers to write the content and get them trained. And then from there, really the biggest expense is like our labor, right?
Yeah.
Our payroll, for our team. Yeah.
Got it. Makes sense. I wanted to touch on things you're telling clients to do more. So you
Yeah.
said that could be something like, hey, you might have to get accredited on the Better Business Bureau. Everyone else is doing that. What
Mhm.
are some other common things that you're typically telling your clients to do?
Yeah. A lot of it is around the link building, right? Figuring that out. Sometimes it's about local SEO, which I know we'll probably talk more about. Getting them to respond to reviews in a timely manner, getting them to get more reviews, getting them to be more active with publishing photos on their Google business listings. um Maybe getting them to do things like, hey, when people come to the office, like click on driving directions so that we get more of those user signals. um all kinds of things that
Mm.
we do. And so from there, like I said, the clients that actively participate and are engaged and do their homework, those are the ones that turn into some of our best case studies.
Awesome. Yeah,
Mhm.
let's touch more on Google Business Profile stuff. I feel
Mhm.
like it's always a hot topic. I mean, it's there's not too many things to do there, and it's
Yeah.
you can see results pretty quickly. Yeah,
Yeah.
what are some of the things you're seeing that are moving the needle there? What's working with your clients?
Yeah. So I'd say a uh making sure, I'm not sure how technical your audience is, but I'll just mention that schema, I think, is something that we see as being important in the world of local rankings.
Mm.
Making sure. So for those that don't know what schema is, on a website, you have your HTML, right? And so that's the stuff that the user sees. That's the images and the content that, is on your website that people can see and click. But in the background, there's like this other language that's specifically written for the search engines, for AI, to basically give them more clues into who you are, and what you do. And so schema markup is something that you can go in to tell the search engines such as Google that, hey, this is the name of our business. This is our verified address. This is our verified phone number. There's something called same as schema where you can tell the search engines that we're the same as, company that is referenced in this New York Times article. We're the same as a company that's also has this specific Facebook profile, this specific LinkedIn profile, right? You can tell them this is the latitude and longitude of our office. You can tell them that these are some of the verified reviews.
Mm.
You can tell them that this is what you're known for, right? So there's different things that you can mention in there. I mean, it just kind of goes on and on and on.
Yeah, no, I know.
And so, in the world of legal, like you have to have the edge, right?
Mm.
Because, my competitors, right, are working with very sophisticated agencies. And so I have to be more sophisticated than some of the most sophisticated agencies in the country, right?
Hmm.
You had mentioned you had Chris Dreyer on.
Hmm.
Chris Dreyer has an agency called Rankings. They're also a very reputable agency that
Hmm.
that focuses on legal. So a lot of times, like Chris's crew and my crew kind of going like neck and neck just to try to get that little edge, right? And so that's kind of what it takes. Now, having said that, you know, pest control, like the industry that you specialize in, maybe it's not as competitive, right? Maybe you don't need that firepower of the large budget. You know what I mean? So I'm just saying, like, what I need to do in some of the most competitive markets is a lot of times different than the rest of the world, I guess. So
Yeah,
mm,
yeah. Well,
mm,
it's got to be tough, right? Because doesn't there have to be a breaking point where, like, I mean, we're just spending so much on SEO and it's
Mhm.
getting too ridiculous and everyone's so competitive. Like, just isn't that tough in your space?
Not necessarily, because at the end of the day, like, you think like 15 grand, that is not even that expensive. I mean, I've had clients that paid us over $100,000 per month for SEO, right? Like,
Wow.
just for one client. On average, we got clients that are in bigger markets like Los Angeles and Dallas and places like that that will often pay $30 to $50,000 per month on SEO, right? And it
Mm.
it seems like a lot of money, but when a law firm's getting 100 cases per
Yeah,
month
yeah.
as a result of, a $50,000 per month SEO spend, and every case has a minimum value of 12,500. Like I said, that's kind of like the minimum, their fees. I'm with a $50,000 value, I could be generating over $1 million in revenue for that firm, right? So, like,
Mm.
the ROI is there.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna mention is it's
Mhm.
about ROI. It doesn't even have to be like, oh, we're paying this much for backlinks. We're doing this. It's like, look, if we're generating you $100,000 a month, I mean, it makes sense to
Exactly.
pay 10, 20K a month.
Yep.
So yeah, cool. That
Exactly.
makes sense. I want to get clear on the schema stuff.
Mhm.
Um, so, and just for people that don't know, obviously Google Business Profile on your website is different, but
Yep.
your website can still power up your Google Business Profile. I think
That's
that's
right.
what you were
Yep.
hinting at.
Mhm.
Um, so with the schema, are you talking with the schema across the site or just to the page you link to? Because I know there's some nuance there.
Both. So I think that the page that you link to, if you have a brick and mortar business, which most of my clients do, you basically should have the Google My Business profile, right? For that location, linking to a specific page that's built for that location.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think that's important. And then you also want to be linking back with a map embed, right?
Mm,
Back to that specific page. And then the schema, there's definitely like schema that goes throughout the whole website. And then
yeah.
there, in the world of legal, there's something called legal services schema. And that is specifically for that page. And that's where you can kind of give it more information about, that specific location, the longitude, latitude, right? All of the zip codes that you service for that location, right? So you can get very specific with schema. And I mean, you can probably, write more schema than you do, just HTML, right?
Mm.
When you're kind of completing that, because you can go down rabbit holes of, okay, great. Like, we even do things where we'll actually like link out to the Wikipedia page that defines that specific
Yeah,
location, right? So like there are things that you can do to be a little bit more sophisticated than the next person.
got
But
it. Yeah, let's go deeper on those landing pages. Obviously, this is super important, and this applies to basically any local business, and it will usually be some combination of a service and city. At least that's most common in home services, which is what I'm
Yep.
most familiar with. So
Mhm.
might be pest control Chicago or
Yep.
termite control Houston.
Mhm.
There's some kind of combination there. And in legal, I know you guys have something similar there. What are you guys putting on those pages, and what really moves the needle there?
Yeah. So in most cases, a lot of our clients might have like, one headquarters, right? That's their main office, and they might have a couple satellite offices as well. And so in order for us to be able to dominate an entire region or entire state, it's either you open up offices in every single city, which is not really plausible, or we develop a content strategy to make sure that we have a personal injury lawyer page, a car accident lawyer page, a slip and fall lawyer page for every small city in the state,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And so you obviously start with the city in which their headquarters is. So if it's in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, we have a Fort Lauderdale personal injury lawyer page, a Fort Lauderdale slip and fall page,
Yeah.
right? All of those. But then we kind of continue to expand. And so we might have 20 practice area pages, and we write those practice area pages for every city throughout the state. And then there's a way in which we internally link those pages so that you have slip and fall pages, linking back to other cities, right? So it gets really sophisticated in the way in which we internally link the pages so that we can pass relevancy and page rank. And then we also build out something called topical authority. So if you have a car accident lawyer page, right, that could be like a parent page for what would be like a head-on collision accident lawyer or fatal car accident lawyer or a left turn car accident lawyer, right? I mean, like you can get really sophisticated, right? And all of those sub practice areas of car accident all link to the car accident lawyer referencing the anchor text as the first link on the page, right? So like a lot of times we're building out a lot of these sub practice area pages, not so much that we're ever going to get people that will type in, left turn car accident lawyer, right? We do, don't get me wrong, like those will generate cases, but they're zero search volume, zero competition. But what's happening is those pages are basically serving as the building out the topical authority for some of those other more important pages, which is building out the topical authority for the personal injury page in Fort Lauderdale, which is the root, right? So that's
Yeah.
the main page, right? So we're building out all of these. I don't know, we might have like 50 pages, right? That are kind of just boosting up that Fort Lauderdale personal injury page, right? It gets
Mm.
really sophisticated. Mhm.
Yeah. So that's almost a strategy to rank what's called like pillar pages. You kind of have
Correct.
your
Yep.
core concept, like the pest
Mhm.
control Chicago or the,
Yep.
the lawyer of Houston, whatever.
That's right.
You want to have supporting pages for those. That's what you're saying.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Mhm.
And it doesn't even so much. I just want to make sure I'm clear here. To hear your thoughts on this. It doesn't even really matter if those pages rank, but almost their sole purpose is to power up the
That's
top
right.
level page.
Yeah. In fact, I had a call recently. Like this is like one of my pet peeves. My pet peeve is when, we've been working with a law firm, right? Let's just say we've been working with a personal injury lawyer for like 7 years, right? And it all started with us working directly with the personal injury lawyer. Eventually, the personal injury lawyer does so well because of all the cases that we've helped generate that they now have a budget to bring in a marketing director, right?
Mm.
And so now the new marketing director comes in, and that can get really interesting because a lot of times the marketing director, they come in and they need to justify, their new role, right? So the first thing they say is like, holy shit, we're spending like $40,000 a month on SEO.
Hmm.
That's crazy. Like, at my old place, like I was only spending 5,000. Like, so they're immediately like a lot of times they come in, try to shave budget, right? And
Hmm.
sometimes they're successful, right? But the reason why I mentioned this is because I was on a call recently with a marketing director that was new to a firm. And so the marketing director just came in and they're like, I see that we have all of these like pages, right, that don't get any traffic. Like this, fatal car accident lawyer in Fort Lauderdale and this, whatever, right? And there's a bunch of these pages and they're like, I want to get your agency to remove all those pages. And I'm like,
Oh no.
I said, absolutely not. I said, I'll call my client who I have the relationship with and I'll terminate the relationship before I do that to my friend because that would have just killed his whole website.
Mm.
And so sometimes you have to do the right thing. And in this case, I was ready to fire the client just to make sure that they didn't, lose the investment that they've been making for all this year just because of an incompetent marketing director.
Dang. Okay. So, well, actually, first I'll ask you this. So you are not a lawyer, but you're making content for lawyers, or your agency is making content for lawyers. And obviously, it's very sensitive, and you're making tons of content. I mean, it might be like 100 or more pages per site.
Yeah.
How are you making sure that that content is expert level, that
Mhm.
it's um, that also it's not duplicate content? Because a lot of those topics obviously are fairly similar and
That's
they're
right.
just talking about a slight nuance in the service maybe. How do you make sure that the content is good and that it's not duplicate?
Sure. For one, that's always a misconception is when you're working with a lawyer that you have to write content in legalese as though you're writing to another lawyer.
Mm.
But that's not the case. The people that are hiring a lawyer, a lot of times it might be their first time ever having to hire a lawyer, right? Somebody was in a bad car accident, they're in the hospital. Most people are reading at an eighth grade level, right? So it really comes down to writing content for that audience, right?
Mm.
And having more compassion, having more empathy, talking about some of the pain points that they might be feeling. You might be scared. You might not know how are you going to pay your medical bills. You don't know like how are you going to get your car fixed, right? You start talking about some of their pain points, and it's okay. We've helped people like you in the past. You're on the right page, right? Kind of, and then you talk a little bit about the firm, obviously. So how we do that in a way that we don't do it so that it's duplicate content, is, just through, skill, over time, you just that, we reference. So if we're writing specifically about Fort Lauderdale, we'll reference Fort Lauderdale courthouses, municipalities, right? Whereas if it's a different city, we might be referencing those, right? But a lot of times, like the opening is like, similar, like
Yeah.
then coming across having empathy and compassion, right? But optimized in a way that it's obviously going to have the right H1 tag, and you're optimizing for those cities. And so a lot of times, because like it's not really all that competitive, and if a website is super authoritative with links, even if some of the content seems as though, like, let's just say it's like 27% duplicate if you ran it through like a copyscape, it's still going to rank anyway.
Mm. Got it.
Mhm.
I wanted to switch gears here, and I wanted to touch on AI and LLMs and all this stuff. I know it's been a hot topic for the past few years. It seems like everyone wants to hear it all the time.
Yeah.
So first off, what have you seen has changed in the past few years? Let's start with just Google.
Mhm.
What's changed with Google in the past few years? Because there's been AI overviews, now they have AI mode. Have you changed much of your strategy, and what have you seen has changed?
We haven't really changed much of the strategy. Our strategy is still the same, for the most part. We're seeing that AI overview is picking things up, obviously, from the content that we've been writing. So I think that the strategy will kind of still remain the same. I think links still carry the same importance as they ever did. Now we're doing things a little differently, though, where we might be leveraging parasites, or posting listicles on authoritative websites, so that we can actually try to optimize some of the chat sites, giving us a greater chance of ranking, like who are the best personal injury
Yeah.
lawyers in Miami, right? I think if you can publish an article on USA Today that talks about the 5 best personal injury lawyers in Miami, because you've already studied it. You know that USA Today is a source that ChatGPT uses, right?
Mm.
So it's no different. I think in the world of SEO, whether you call it AEO, GEO, SEO, whatever you want to call it, at the end of the day, we are just conditioned to reverse engineer algorithms, right?
Mm.
And so in fact, I actually went back to college. I went and got an executive MBA at Stanford, just because I wanted to be surrounded with some of the smartest people that are developing a lot of these new AI technologies. And so, so you're always kind of like, making sure that you're trying to just be a little bit smarter than the next day, and I love this stuff. Like, I love it when there's new challenges, because a lot of our clients need us even more than they did before, some of this change took place.
Yeah, definitely. So you've been in the space almost 25 years now. I want to ask you almost the flip side of that, which would be what has always remained the same? What
Yeah.
what what are the principles that have stayed intact?
Yeah. I think 3 things. Making sure that the website has a good, solid technical structure and makeup, right? Making it very easy for search engines and chatbots to basically crawl the site, right? And index the site. I think that's important. Writing or publishing content that satisfies the intent of what people are searching for, right? I don't think that will ever change, whether it's in the written format or if it's in a video format. I think that's important. And then the third, well, which has always been the case, is, building authority through links. Now that has certainly been, there's been a lot of iterations of link building. When I first got into SEO, there was a whole world of spammy link building. I mean, you found that Coca-Cola had some kind of like like a forum, and you can basically leave a comment on a Coca-Cola forum and you put your name as personal injury lawyer Miami, right? And then that Coca-Cola forum would link back to you using that exact match anchor tag.
Yeah.
And even though it wasn't relevant to personal injury, like you still have a link from Coca-Cola, right? And then that would really drive the results, right? Nowadays, that doesn't work. It can be seen as spammy and malicious, and you can probably get, your site penalized if you did too much of that. But, at the end of the day, it just comes down to getting like strong links, good links.
Yeah. I wanted to dive a little bit deeper on that because
Mm.
I feel like a lot of people kind of end up on one of two ends of the spectrum, which would be authoritative links or relevant links. And you mentioned relevance, but could you explain a little bit further on that? Where do you lean towards, authority or relevance or both?
You have to try to find a mix of both, right? I mean, like a guest blog post on a site that has a lot of different guest blog posts on all kinds of different topics, right? You might have one article that's talking about pest control, and then 2 articles later they're talking about, car crashes in Seattle, right? Obviously the topical authority of that website isn't necessarily all about, car accidents, right? So should I build a link on that? Yes, I mean, kind of depending on the domain authority of the website and, and where you're linking to. Sure. Is that website going to really push the needle? Maybe not, right? But it's at least it's checking the box that you've got the same link that your competitor got because they've got a link from that guest blog post website too, right? However, if you're doing real things, right? Let's just say you're a personal injury lawyer, right? And you represented a celebrity, and that celebrity, ends up in the news, and then you were representing them, and so now you've got a link from TMZ, you've got a link from CNN, you've got a link from Fox News, right? All because you were the personal injury lawyer that represented the celebrity. Those are good links. Now, is CNN all about personal injury law? No, right? But it's like a PR96 website that is probably one of the most trusted websites on the internet. And the fact that they have an article that's relevant to your clients and what you do, that's some of the best links that you can get, right? So trying to figure out a way that you can kind of maneuver to get, all types of links like that.
Yeah. Okay. So what people say, it's almost like investing in stocks. You have to diversify. It's not just try to get a CNN link or don't just sign up for like the lawyer directory, but get a good healthy mix of both. Got it.
Exactly right. Yeah.
So something else I wanted to talk to you about, and I think you have a pretty unique perspective on this, is social media. So you have a huge following. You have over 1 million followers on Instagram, a lot on LinkedIn and Facebook. So it seems like you value social media for your personal brand, but do you recommend it for your clients and other local businesses?
I do. It just depends on who your audience is. Like for me, like I talk about a couple different topics, right? Like I talk about my passion, which is SEO. But over the years, I've built an agency. I scaled an agency, right? And so I talk about agency life. And then I also talk about, business, right? And all the lessons that I learned in business, right? So I'm trying to like capture multiple audiences, I guess, with my personal brand. Do I think it's important? Yeah, I think everybody should have an active social media campaign, right? But at the end of the day, like I also take into consideration that, the topic of like law is a very boring topic.
Yeah.
And so should you be creating videos like every day about, here's the 6 things you need to do, before you hire a personal injury lawyer? I mean, sure, you know what I mean? Like you could have some of that content, but maybe instead, talk about, that, you're giving away backpacks for, underprivileged kids and for everybody to come to your office
Mm.
on a Saturday morning, right? So they can get a free backpack, right? Talk about the things that you're maybe doing in the community. Maybe go out and highlight like a teacher, right? Give away an award for like nominate the best teacher, in the district, right? Get very localized. I mean, there's a lot of other things that you can do that would resonate with your audience rather than just talking about such a boring topic of law.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's like essentially getting involved with the community, right? I really like that aspect, and I kind of like you were saying earlier, I don't like SEO just being a one-sided thing and it's just the agency, but
Mhm.
I would like to work with a business, ideally that's already someone involved in the community, and then we could just, demonstrate that and amplify that by showing it on social media and other
Yeah.
places. But I feel like you have to be doing the right stuff in person, and then that's almost the easiest stuff to advertise.
And another thing I'd say too is like, so anybody that follows me, you're gonna see my life, right? Especially on Facebook. I'm pretty active on Facebook. I'll post photos of my kids, what they're doing, our trips that we take. A lot of times, like I get clients, that have just been following me on Facebook, just because they see me as like a family guy. I'm a business guy. I seem like a trustworthy person, right? And that's who people like to do business with, right?
Mm.
And so a lot of times when I see somebody, they're like, "Oh, Jason, I've been following you on social media, man. Oh my God, like that trip you took to Italy with your family was just so amazing, right?" A lot of times that's the stuff that they talk about, right? They're not talking about that video that I did 6 months ago about like rel canonical tags. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm.
gives a shit about that.
True.
You know what I mean? Like, so like that's the stuff that really resonates. And then I use humor a lot too. I don't take myself seriously. I think in fact my last LinkedIn post that I published yesterday was I said, okay, I'll admit I cheated in high school, but I did it the hard way, right? I didn't use AI. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, yeah.
stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like adding humor, to the mix as well. I think is important.
Yeah. No, definitely. I found that helpful for myself. One of the last questions I wanted to ask you, Jason, is what is the future of local marketing? Where are things headed? Things are changing so fast and they're continuing to go faster. Where do you see things headed?
Yeah. So I would say, I can't predict, where, the world of AI is heading. All I can say is the stuff that you have to just get right is just doing a good service for your clients,
Mm.
right? Creating a good experience for your clients. Um, maybe leveraging people like you, me, experts that are trained and versed in different fields to come in and to maybe add commentary on where you can maybe adjust the strategy a bit, where you should maybe be focusing on, where you should be, maybe spend less time focusing on. I do that often. I myself, like I consider myself like an SEO expert after all these years, but I'm certainly not the smartest person in the room. There's people that are way smarter at local SEO, way smarter at schema markup than I am.
Mhm.
And I will often bring them in to audit my client's work. I call that outsourcing genius, right? You don't
Yeah.
need to bring them in full time. You just pay them couple $1,000, they audit your work. You're like, oh my God, that's amazing. Thank you. Then you basically leverage the stuff that they shared. You do an experiment. If it works, right? Then all my clients get the benefit of that, right? So even us as experts, we do that. So you as a business owner should certainly be kind of leveraging that. And then, try to get positive reviews, reply to the reviews, any of the tools that Google gives you or ChatGPT gives you, make sure you're leveraging that, uploading photos, uploading video, you know what I mean? Just make sure you're exploiting as much of the tools that they give you, you
Love
know?
that. And
Mhm.
last question I've got for you, Jason, and it kind of ties into what you were already saying, but whatever you'd like to say here. What is your message for either local business owners or local marketers? What do you
Mhm.
want to tell them? What do you think they need to know?
Yeah. So, if you've got it, if you've gotten to this point of the podcast, like, I applaud you,
Mhm.
because, most people don't take action or they get bored. And so the fact that you've kind of listened for 45 minutes and you've gotten to the end, you're a different kind of person, right? You're
Mm.
like the 1%. And so congratulations, right? You're a go-getter. And usually the 1% are the people that win in life, just because they're always trying to kind of get better, whether they're listening to a podcast or they are reading books or they're taking action, right?
Mm.
And I always like to say that you can create the future that wasn't going to exist in life by taking action, right? I wake up every single day and I'm like, what action can I take today that is going to, make my life better tomorrow? Right. And so, there's a lot of things that we talked about on this podcast that you've been taking copious notes. Don't just leave the notes aside. A lot of people do. They go to conferences and they're like
Mm.
inspired and they're writing so much
Mhm.
stuff down and they get home and they just get back to their everyday life. Right. And they don't take action. So you have to go take action.
Amen. Take action. Awesome. Well,
Mhm.
I love that message. Super simple, applies to everyone.
Mhm.
Thank you so much for coming on the show, Jason. This has been awesome. It's been great to meet you and chat with you. Where can people find you on social media and connect with you?
You can meet me on Instagram, just at Jason Hennessy, LinkedIn, Jason Hennessy, Facebook. Again, if you want to meet my family, Jason Hennessy, and Danny, you are one of those people that took action, right? Because I wouldn't be on this podcast if you didn't watch a different podcast that I was
Yeah.
on, right? And then you reached out to me, not even knowing who I was, right? And said, "Hey, Jason, I was inspired. By the way, will you be on my podcast?" Right. So, like, you took action and you created a future that wasn't going to exist. Right. So, you're
Mm.
living proof of this happening right now. Right. So, like, I just want to get you to see that. Right. You didn't have to reach out to me and I didn't have to respond. Right. But I will always kind of, go the extra mile for people that are in that 1%.
No, I appreciate you acknowledging that. I love
Mhm.
the way you phrase that. Making the if hopefully I'm not getting
Creating the
this wrong.
future.
Making the future happen that
Yep.
wouldn't exist.
Exactly.
Love
Hmm.
that, man. Yeah, no, that's what I'm trying to do here. And like you said, the podcasting is so powerful because now, I might be talking to clients, or I might be talking to other people in SEO, and be like, well, I don't know much, but here's what Jason said, and I had him on my podcast, and you can go watch it. So
Yeah.
I love the podcasting frame, and yeah,
Yep.
thank you so much for coming on again. Also, I'll ask you, is there anything else you'd like to plug or promote here?
I'd say, if you got value from this, I have a book that probably would be applicable to the audience that's listening. It's called Honest SEO. You can buy it on Amazon. It's basically me spending about 18 months giving the person that's going to read it as much value that I feel that I could give them in the 4 hours that it takes to read the book. So, yeah.
Awesome. Cool. So
Mhm.
make sure to go follow Jason on every social platform. Make sure to go buy his book, Honest SEO. All those links will be in the description. And thanks again for coming on, Jason. This has been great.
Thank you.
Of course.